Welcome to Imposters, the show where I have revealing conversations with world-class execs, athletes, and entertainers about their personal challenges and how overcoming those challenges has shaped their careers and lives for the better. I'm your host, Alex Lieberman, co-founder and executive chairman of Morning Brew. My guest today is Duff Goldman. Duff is a renowned chef and the star of many of the Food Network's most popular shows, including Ace of Cakes, Ace of Taste, and Duff Takes the Cake. He's also the owner of the famous Baltimore-based bakery, Charm City Cakes, the founder of Duff's Cake Mix, and a New York Times bestselling author of several cookbooks, including his latest, Super Good Cookies for Kids. Despite being about as successful as you could possibly be as a chef, Duff is well aware of his own areas of weakness. In this Mental Health Toolkit episode, Duff describes how he built his brand in the food world and what he does to keep his mental health in check when insecurities or even imposter syndrome start to take hold. My full conversation with Duff Goldman right after this quick break. Staying hydrated is one of the simplest ways that you can take care of yourself and your health. It can also be one of the first things to become an afterthought when your focus gets pulled away. Action ion-charged alkaline water can make it easier and more enjoyable to keep up with hydration. Action water goes through a multi-stage purification and filtration process to ensure it's at peak quality. Action water is at a 9.5 pH level or higher at the time of bottling. Plus, there are electrolytes added for taste with no sodium added. Learn more at drinkaction.com. That's drinkaction.com. Duff Goldman, welcome to Imposters. You're a baker who has found incredible success across many mediums. You have your show, Ace of Cakes, which ran for 5 years on Food Network, and it's one of the most highly viewed and rated food programs of all time. You're a New York Times bestselling author and the owner of Charm City Cakes, which is the bake shop featured on Ace of Cakes. But before we talk about all of your success, I want to know how you got there. How did you find your way into baking?
How much time you got? So I was, when I was 14, I was a graffiti artist and I needed money to buy spray paint. Couldn't ask my mom for money for spray paint for painting on trains and stuff. So I got a job at McDonald's, and that was how I made enough money to pay for paint. And then eventually I went to University of Maryland, Baltimore, and I started working at a restaurant, a fine dining restaurant there. And that's when I kind of realized there's this whole world of, like amazing food out there that I just wasn't aware of. And so after undergrad, I went to pastry school because when I was working at that restaurant, I wasn't cooking. I was actually the baker. I baked cornbread and biscuits for 2 years, every day, right? Nonstop. It was amazing. But I fell in love with it. I fell in love with baking. It's just, it's very cerebral. I have a degree in philosophy, so I think a lot. And baking is a very contemplative craft.
I love it. Well, you ended up obviously finding a ton of success in your craft, but there's kind of this transition that every successful creative or artist has to make, which is the transition from creating art to being an owner, a person who's an entrepreneur, someone who has to run the operations of their business. How did you make that transition?
It's fun. I'm still making it, honestly. And I think that like one of the biggest things that I realized was that I'm a creative person. My great grandmother was a weaver and a baker and a milliner. She made ladies' hats. My grandmother was a photographer and a silversmith, and she had incredible eyes. She was just a collector. My mom is a stained glass artist, and she also does mosaics. She did ceramics for a long time, and I'm a terrible businessman. Terrible, right? It's just not I'm not good at it. I've almost
At least you know yourself.
Yeah. Like I've almost bankrupted the whole company, like at least twice. And finally, what I have done is I've hired a bunch of people that are really good at business, and we have a great sort of collaboration where they're really good at talking to adults, and I'm really good at coming up with cool ideas. And like not just coming up, but like how to execute, and there's a where and a why, and there's definitely a method to the madness. But we have a really good system now. We have people that really understand me and help me to do the things that I'm good at, and they then do the things that I'm not, which is running a business, running a profitable business, anyways.
Well, one thing I would say is you may not give yourself a lot of credit for, business acumen or entrepreneurship, but I would say one of the most important traits of successful entrepreneurs is self-awareness, is just knowing the shit that you're very good at and knowing the stuff that you're not. So then you can delegate kind of around your blind spots in a way that it doesn't burn you. And it seems like you've done that effectively.
Yeah. And I think that I definitely give myself credit for the fact that I was able to release the ego, right? And not be like, no, I am a businessman. And I am. And I have some good ideas, and I'm not useless, right? But just the day-to-day of running a business, I'm just not good at it. I have I have a pretty good attention span, but sometimes when it comes to that kind of stuff, I'm like a gnat. I'm just like, what else is happening?
But it's funny you say that, and it makes me think about areas of business that honestly, I feel like I have the attention span of a gnat, or I tend to procrastinate more. And I think actually part of the answer lies that I probably don't have a short attention span. It's just when you spend time on things that don't give you a ton of energy, it's hard to fake it, and it's hard to fake having attention around it. So I think that makes total sense. I want to talk about some of the early days of the business where you first cooked out of your apartment, then you cooked in a disgusting kitchen before buying an actual church just to use their kitchen. Take me through the mindset that you had in those stages of business.
So I was living in Baltimore, and I decided that I was going to be a rock star. I'm a musician. All my buddies are musicians. So I was like, I'm going to get a big record deal, be a famous rock star. So I started making cakes out of my apartment as a way to pay the rent. And that way I could make my own schedule. So when I had to go on tour, or make a record, or play shows, or do whatever, I could do that. I had the time. And if I knew I was going to be on tour for 2 weeks in the summer, I just wouldn't schedule any cakes for that time. And so and that was cool. That was kind of what I was doing. And then one of my buddies, Jeff, was working as an architectural model builder. And he's also a musician, wanted to pursue it full time. So he was like, hey, I'm going to quit from the architect firm, and I'm going to learn how to make cakes with you. And so he sort of became my partner. And then I hired a bunch of my buddies and bands. And so pretty soon it was like 4 or 5 dudes in rock bands making the best wedding cakes in Baltimore. It was strange. It was a strange thing. And then eventually we moved. So I moved from my apartment. I got a row house, a little brownstone, and we were working out of there. And then the one day the health department showed up, and they were like, "Hey, we got a complaint that you're making wedding cakes in here." And this is a true story. The guy's at the door. He's got a badge and everything, and I'm dressed, like me. I'm just camo shorts and a t-shirt and everything. And I'm looking at the guy, and I was like, do I look like a cake decorator to you? And he was like, good point. And he went away. Yeah. And so, but I was like, yo, you guys, we got a bolt. When it first started, it was funny. So when I was in my apartment, it was just me. And I was I built the website. I baked everything. I did all the decorating. I did all the deliveries. I met all the customers. I was a one-man show. And so what I did was I went to Kinko's and I made business cards on sheets of cardboard, cut them out with a little chopper. And I got a chef coat, and I put them in my pocket. And then I decorated a fake wedding cake. It was styrofoam inside. And there was on the block next to me, next to my apartment, was a really nice wedding venue. And I noticed that every Saturday and Sunday, all these brides were coming there because they go to see the wedding venue when it's all gussied up for a wedding so they can see what it looks like. So what I did was I put on my chef coat, I put my business cards in my pocket, And so all afternoon, Saturdays and Sundays, I would just walk around. There was a little park in front of it, and I would just walk from one end of the park to the other. And the brides would be coming to me like, "Oh my God, look at that cake!" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, take a card." And like within like 4 months, I was making all of their cakes. It was great.
It's wild. It's funny. You were a little bit like self-deprecating about your business savvy earlier, but I don't think you give yourself enough credit. Maybe it's like the type of thing where you're not the person who's necessarily running the financials of your business on a quarterly basis, but it seems like you had the intuition to just like figure shit out because you had no other option.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's Genghis Khan was like, he was a really good conqueror, right? But he wasn't a good governor. Like I could start a business, right?
Yeah.
Give me something like you want a taco truck that serves mac and cheese, done. Like I'll do it. I'll get it started for you. But once it's like off the ground and running, like here, you got to take it now. Like you can't let me have it because there's an arc there.
Even though Duff doesn't give himself a lot of credit for the day-to-day management of his own business, you have to admire the ingenuity and scrappiness he used to get his business off the ground. Duff also used that innate creativity to bring his own TV shows to life, including Ace of Cakes, which ran for 10 seasons on the Food Network, the children's show Duff's Happy Fun Bake Time, which he launched last year, and his most recent Food Network show, Duff Ace of Taste. We're going to take a quick break here, but when we come back, we'll get into how Duff keeps his head above water in the demanding environment of the food industry, his mental health toolkit, as well as how he deals with his own insecurities despite his level of success. Stay with us. On this show, I talk to people about overcoming the things that used to make them lose sleep. Anxiety, indecision, imposter syndrome, you name it. But once you've done the work to grow beyond your mental blocks, something as simple as an uncomfortable mattress can still stand between you and your best self. That's why I want to tell you about Purple. Their mattresses are made with their revolutionary Gel Flex grid that instantly adapts to movement and keeps you cool all night long, so you can experience the restorative sleep you'll need to put your problems in the past. Experience life-changing sleep for yourself with fast, free shipping on select Purple mattresses. Visit a showroom or order online for a 100-night, no-pressure trial. Learn more at purple.com. That's PURPLE.com. And we're back. Before the break, Duff described the creative avenues he found to grow his business. But knowing how challenging the food industry can be, I was curious to hear Duff's take on exactly why working in food can be so intense and how he navigates this kind of demanding work environment.
Something that I'm particularly interested in because I've always been, fascinated not just by food, but also just the industry and the business behind food. The restaurant industry, the dessert industry. And, there's been so much that's said, at least through media, about, the restaurant industry having workplace abuse or substance abuse. What is your overall take of this and your experience with kind of the environment that exists in the kitchen and in the industry?
It's a good question. You see stuff, you know what I mean? Like I've seen a lot. You see a lot of drugs, you see a lot of coke, see a lot of alcoholism. You just see the thing about cooking is as a job, it's difficult to stay healthy physically and mentally and emotionally. It's a demanding job. It's creative and it takes a lot of soul. It takes a lot of heart. It takes you got to give it everything you got to be good at it. And it's also physically demanding. And the difficult thing about cooking is just the sort of the way that food works, the way that our sort of like eating cycles work is that you don't get a lot of time off. You don't get a lot of downtime. You don't get a lot of time to, recuperate. It's not like the corporate world, like restaurants operate at very, very, very small margins. So you can't have this whole stable of, lots and lots of cooks working at your restaurant. You can't afford them, that your food's going to get too expensive and then no one's going to come there because they're not going to pay $35 for a hamburger, which is kind of what the restaurant industry is going through right now. There's a lot of people that are like, you got to pay people more, which is good. But at the same time, it's like, you got to have like a reasonable expectation. Like restaurants are what they are. And it's tough, right? You see a lot of people neglect the themselves. They neglect the taking care of themselves, going to the gym, eating healthy. Like, man, when you're working in a kitchen, right? Like you're just constantly you're putting stuff in your body. When I was in college, I was an athlete. I played hockey, I played lacrosse. I was a big, strong dude. I became a chef, and like immediately, like I probably gained like 50 pounds. I mean, it was fast, it was fast. So, I think there's a lot of, kind of self neglect. And then there's also just the realities of like, it's a very stressful job, right? It's a high demanding job that you need to be able to operate under pressure, which, I hate sounding like this, but like you're finding a lot more younger people now aren't operating well under pressure.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you're cooking, it's like, yo, I need you to cook that steak. I need to do it now. I'm going to stick your head in the blender. You know what I mean? Like, you just say stuff like that. Hey, come on, let's go. And like,
Yeah.
can't do that anymore. And it's like, the way that like abuse is bad. 100% of the time, abuse is bad. But like camaraderie is good. And, being in the trenches is good. So it's tough. I think it's tough that people have to kind of watch it because like you can ruin your career by saying the
Yeah.
wrong thing, and that that's just a tough tightrope to walk. I think for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that makes total sense. I mean, for you specifically, as you talk about, and you alluded to it with early in your career, but as you think about kind of the physical challenges and the mental challenges that can be presented by just the reality of the industry, how has that been for you? Have you experienced challenges on the physical or mental side, and how do you try to keep that in check today?
Yeah, I mean it's just the general fatigue that people get from standing for 13 hours. Like it's hard. It's hard. You're tired. At the end of the day, you're exhausted, and like you
Got to have
that
strong feet.
that yeah, you got to got to be strong. You have to just physically be able to do the work. It's like being a landscaper or being a blacksmith or being a roofer or a framer or a mechanic. It's the exact same thing. You're doing physical labor, and you have to be able to do it. So there's that. And, so I had a lot on my plate, and there was a couple times that I got pretty exhausted. But it's also good for you, right? It's good. You got to push yourself. It's good to push yourself to the point where you're like, I literally can't move. I can't do anything. Like it's nice to find that point. You can't exist like that for a long time, but it's definitely
Totally.
important to push yourself hard and see what you're capable of. And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are really afraid of is to like just seeing what they're capable of, pushing themselves to the point of failure, which is like that's how you get stronger. That's how you get better.
What are the few things that you do for yourself to get into the right place mentally or physically? So you just think about the demands of the job, the stress of the job. When you have downtime, what are you doing for yourself just to center yourself and just like kind of keep life kind of light?
For me personally, like one of the things
Yeah.
that like I need to do like constantly is lift. Right, I love to lift. And like I do a lot of different things, but I have a treadmill, I run. I'm constantly doing things, but like I love to lift heavy things. I'm built like Barney Rubble, right? I'm just a little like I'm a little gnome, but I'm strong. And so I think like that kind of thing is putting on music and lifting is great. Also, just music in general, I find really helps. You put on some music and you just find something you like. Put on some James Brown or Fela Kuti, just something with a good beat that you can really just kind of glide into. But honestly, like the biggest thing I find is just being aware, being present. I travel a lot. I got to travel all the time. Constantly on planes and airports and doing my thing. And there's this thing that I do before I go to the airport. And I do this in lots of different places in my life where before I go to the airport, I like adopt a sense of like like gratitude and like oneness for all the people that I'm around. When you go to the airport, everybody's just in a rush and they're stressed and there's crowds and the airports are just pits of despair and awfulness. When you go into an airport and you are exuding a positive mental attitude, and when you really get there and you really are able to kind of harness that, and you put that energy out there. I know I sound like some weird hippie, but like, man, it like you can see it. You see it affect everybody. You get up to the person behind the counter that's going to take your luggage and check you in, and you're just like, hey, how's it going, man? This is crazy today. Look at all these people. This is wild. Like just like making small talk and like, just whatever. You just see people just lighten up, and they're just like, oh man, like, thank you for seeing that I am a human being also, and we're all here. I want you to get where you're going. You want to get where you're going. Let's do this. You know what I mean? Like, it's great. And like, you find it really helps. And that works in every situation.
I mean, not to say, again, I don't know how you operate in the kitchen, and maybe you're a little bit more intense than how you describe in the airport. But to me, that exercise has to be such a good muscle builder for what you end up doing when you're working in the kitchen. And it's funny, you talk about enjoying lifting heavy weights. In so many ways, when you do this practice in the airport or in other places of practicing gratitude, oneness, appreciation for the people around you. I mean, first of all, not only is there just like osmosis where other people start acting that way also because they see you do it, but you're building up this muscle for yourself where like the gratitude that you're expressing in an airport, all of a sudden it starts showing up in other places in life, even when you're not intentionally practicing it.
100%. I heard a quote one time that it was like something about how, like, every person you meet, everybody out there is fighting a battle that you know nothing about.
Yep.
And when you really take that to heart, really kind of understand what that's saying, all of a sudden, like, your patience for people just is boundless. I think the other thing too is that it helped me realize, like, I'm not special. Right? Everybody thinks they're special. Everybody's got an Instagram account. So everybody's the reality star of their own TV show. And everybody thinks they're special. And I'm not saying this like crotchety old man style. I'm saying this like when you realize that like your insecurities, your anxieties, your fears, all of the things that make you do all the dumb things you do, everybody has them. You're not special. You're not the only anxious person. Like when I do public speaking, I'm about to go on stage, I say the most horrible things to myself. You're not funny. You're not smart. You have no idea what you're talking about. You are a complete fraud. You're going to walk out on that stage. Nobody's going to laugh and nobody cares what you're going to say. I say that to myself every single time I'm about to walk out on stage. I say the most horrible things. And then I laugh at myself and I'm like, oh my God, Duff, you're an idiot. Just go out there and do it. And then you go out and do it and you realize you're fine. But the thing is that we all say those things. Everybody does. Serena Williams probably does. She's like one of the most amazing people that's ever lived, right? Like George Lucas probably says those things. So people say horrible things to themselves. We all do it, which is how we're wired. Anxiety kept us from getting killed by saber-toothed tigers, right? So, I mean, we there's a reason
so
why
true.
we're wired to be like fearful. We got to,
Totally.
I think that, the next part of human evolution is, being able to sort of like really consciously rise above some of those survival mechanisms that were great when we were living in caves. Not so much now. We have we're operating in a different ecosystem.
Well, I think this is like such a good place to close the conversation because you've said two things that complement each other so well. The first is, for listeners who look at you as kind of this celebrity chef, someone who's become, the top 0.1% in their industry, as successful as one could be in the restaurant and especially pastry and dessert industry, I think what you've made very clear is it does not matter how much you excel in your given endeavors. You still have self-defeating, self-doubting thoughts all of the time. And, everyone listening just doesn't know about them because they're worrying about their own fears and their own thoughts and their own anxieties. So hopefully it brings some calm to people to realize that they're not the only one dealing with these things. But to the other point, I think the more that we can have some compassion for ourselves and love ourselves for the things we're good at and build that muscle up, the better off we'll be.
And it's honestly just to build on what you said, we all do. We all have those anxieties. We all have those fears. I think the thing that people need to do is just take a step back and be like, hey, you're anxious. It's okay. It's fine. It's okay to be anxious. It's okay to be scared. It's okay. I'm scared all the time. I freak out about stuff. I'm Jewish. I'm neurotic. I constantly overthink everything. But it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Duff Goldman, full-time chef, part-time musician, and part-time philosopher. Thank you for joining Imposters.
Thanks for having me. This is really fun.
Thank you guys so much for watching this episode. I hope you enjoyed, and I'd love to hear from you. Share in the comments your favorite part of this episode, and also what guest you would love to see on Imposters moving forward. And finally, like and subscribe so you get content from this show every single week. I'll see you guys next time.